There is a strange kind of quiet building around you today, Scorpio, and it is not the quiet of nothing happening. It is the quiet before a door opens. Something you have been carrying, a debt, a secret, an unfinished conversation, is about to find its resolution point, and most people watching the sky today will completely miss why. You will not. The bigger picture Sunday's chart centers on a single moving piece. The moon, currently traveling through Gemini and your 8th house. The zone ruled by shared resources, trust, and the things you do not say out loud. As it moves, it forms a supportive sextile to Saturn sitting in your 6th house of work and daily well-being. In Western tropical terms, this is a steadying handshake between your most private house and your most disciplined one. The part of you that hides is briefly being asked to organize itself. That is the mechanical heart of the day. Everything else branches from it. But here is what almost every generic horoscope misses about this particular sextile. It is not loud. Saturn does not create drama when it touches the moon kindly. It creates structure. Many people with this aspect report a day where an anxious topic suddenly feels manageable, not because the topic changed, but because a next step appeared. Hold on to that, because it threads through nearly everything ahead. There is a second layer worth naming honestly. Some Vedic or sidereal readings for today emphasize the moon differently, framing it through Taurus rather than Gemini, given the roughly 24-degree gap between the tropical and sidereal zodiacs. From that Vedic lens, a Taurus moon for Scorpio often corresponds with steadier confidence and a lighter mood, since Taurus sits in a comfortable relationship to your sign in that framework. Both descriptions can be true at once. The Western tropical placement explains the private, careful undertone of the day. The Vedic placement explains why, underneath that carefulness, many Scorpios may still feel an unusual lift in mood and self-assurance. One tradition maps the terrain. The other maps the weather moving over it. Take a breath here, because this next part connects to something bigger than one Sunday. Several longer cycles have been quietly shaping your professional and academic life. The kind that ask you to settle old accounts, what you owe, what is owed to you, what closure finally looks like. These cycles ran from April 2018 through September 2018, again from February 2019 through June of this year, and are set to return from September 17, 2026 through April 14, 2027. That is not a coincidence tucked into today's chart. It is the backdrop today's smaller Moon-Saturn moment is playing against. A private, structural sextile arriving right before a known return of that larger professional reckoning is exactly the kind of alignment that rewards someone who prepares quietly instead of reacting loudly. Love, if you have been sitting on a conversation you do not quite want to have, today's energy leans toward making it smaller and more solvable than your imagination has built it up to be. The 8th house moon governs intimacy, trust, and the parts of a relationship people do not usually narrate out loud, and its steady sextile to Saturn suggests the truth you have been avoiding may land more gently than expected, provided you keep it factual instead of dramatic. You may have noticed that closeness sometimes grows less from grand declarations and more from small, boring reliability. The message that actually gets answered, the plan that actually gets kept. That is precisely what this transit favors today. A timely reply or a completed task can quietly do more relationship building than an emotional confession would. Later in the day, as the moon also moves into a supportive angle with the sun, you may become more aware of how you are perceived by others in a relationship setting. Resist the urge to perform closeness for an audience, even a small one. Ask for the practical adjustment you actually need, then watch over days, not hours, whether the other person turns it into a pattern. That is the real test, and it is a far more honest one than a single sweet moment. Your feelings today deserve a hearing rather than dismissal. Many astrologers working from a psychological framework would frame this as useful information rather than inconvenient noise. Let what you are feeling shape a decision instead of shoving it aside to keep the peace. Career here is where two different sources of insight point at the same target from different directions, and it is worth pausing on. Your longer professional cycle, the one tied to those 2018, 2019, and upcoming 2026-2027 windows, has been quietly building toward a kind of reckoning where past effort finally gets acknowledged, one way or another. Layered on top of that, today's chart adds something immediate and practical. Mercury is preparing to move into Leo and your 10th house of career and public reputation, a shift many astrologers connect to increased visibility around how you present yourself professionally. Now, that combination sounds like a lot of pressure, but there is a genuine gift hidden inside it. The eighth house currently asks you to keep things private and unhurried, almost recluse-like, while you handle internal groundwork. Meanwhile, the coming shift into your public 10th house rewards exactly the kind of quiet preparation you are already inclined toward this weekend. In plain terms, today favors the behind-the-scenes work tightening your online presence, refining how your professional story reads, getting your materials camera ready precisely because attention is about to increase. People do form snap judgments based on image, whether that feels fair or not, so a little polish now may protect a bigger opportunity later, possibly within the next couple of weeks. If you are the type of Scorpio who has been sitting on a bold professional move, current energy suggests a calculated risk at work could pay off, especially paired with more disciplined financial choices already in motion. Money financial themes today run directly through that same eighth house, the traditional house of shared resources, debt, and other people's money. If you are owed something or owe something yourself, this is a favorable window to define, in writing, what balancing that actually looks like. Vague arrangements tend to feel heavier than they are. Specific ones tend to feel lighter almost immediately. This is also a day that leans toward patience rather than big purchases. Real estate decisions in particular are better tabled for now, not because the opportunity disappears, but because Saturn's steady, slow-moving influence favors decisions made with more information, not less. Where caution serves you in real estate, it can loosen slightly around calculated professional risks. The two are not contradictory. One is about locking in a large, hard-to-reverse commitment. The other is about testing an opportunity where you can course correct. Health, if you take away one idea from today, let it be this. The same restraint that feels frustrating in your relationships and finances is quietly protecting your body and your nervous system too. Here is what makes today genuinely worth noticing. The eighth house does not just govern shared money, it governs emotional intensity itself, the kind Scorpio knows intimately. When that intensity meets a steady, organizing aspect like today's Saturn sextile, the usual Scorpio pattern of turning inward and shutting the world out can actually function as a form of recovery rather than avoidance. Most people will read recluse energy as something to fix. It is not. Today, it is closer to maintenance. Practically, that means staying active, watching what you eat, and treating quiet, private time as legitimate self-care rather than something to apologize for. Some Vedic practitioners connect Saturn's slower, disciplined influence to themes of routine and endurance, and may recommend Saturn-related practices, certain colors, mantras, or in some cases gemstones, for individuals whose full birth charts support them. That kind of remedy work is never one-size-fits-all. Gemstone prescription especially requires a real chart reading, not a general audience recommendation, so treat any such suggestion as a personal exploration rather than universal advice. Simple, safe practices: deep breathing, journaling what you are actually feeling instead of pushing it down, a walk instead of a scroll do the same steadying work without needing anyone's birth chart on file. Emotionally, do not dismiss what surfaces today. Feelings arriving under this kind of aspect tend to carry real information rather than noise, even when they are inconvenient. Home and family, the privacy theme that has been running underneath the whole day, extends naturally into your home life. You may find yourself wanting to keep plans and personal matters close, even from people you trust deeply, and that instinct is worth honoring rather than fighting today. It is not withdrawal for its own sake. It is your system asking for room to sort something out internally before bringing it to the group chat. If friends are organizing a shared trip or outing, this is a reasonably good window to join in, provided it is enjoyable and does not strain your finances. Social connection in a low-pressure form tends to complement today's quieter, more internal mood rather than fight against it. Travel and spirit picture a person quietly tidying a house before guests arrive, not performing for anyone, just making sure the space reflects who they actually are. That is close to the emotional posture today's chart supports. Any travel plans right now benefit from that same energy. Modest, unhurried, chosen for genuine enjoyment rather than to prove something to anyone watching. Spiritually, today rewards turning inward rather than seeking answers externally. The eighth house has always been astrology's zone of transformation through depth rather than distraction. And Scorpio, more than any other sign, tends to know this instinctively. Letting yourself sit with an uncomfortable feeling instead of immediately resolving it can, paradoxically, resolve it faster. Lucky signs green carries favorable energy for you today, and the stretch between 4 and 6:30 in the evening stands out as a particularly fortunate window worth using for decisions or conversations that matter. Confidence runs a little higher in you than usual right now, and it is worth noticing rather than downplaying. Remind yourself of your own worth today, because that quiet self-assurance is doing real work behind the scenes. Today's guidance, if there is a single thread tying this entire day together, it is this. Closure does not usually arrive as a dramatic event. It arrives as one clear next step, taken quietly, without an audience. Whether that is a financial detail written down instead of left vague, a career profile polished before anyone asks to see it, or a private feeling finally acknowledged instead of dismissed, the pattern is the same. Small, steady, unglamorous follow-through is what today's sky actually rewards. That door mentioned at the start of all this is not going to swing open on its own. But the quiet groundwork you do today, in a conversation, in your finances, in how you present your work to the world, is exactly what determines how ready you will be when it does. Trust the quiet. It is doing more than it looks like.